Now, normally, guys, what I would do, I would say, welcome to Link Online. But for people who are watching this on the internet or on our website or on Facebook, what we're going to do is we're going to wait a few seconds. What do you think? Just until we actually are on camera. What do you think, guys?
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
Excellent idea.
Right, so we'll look at these pictures, and if you're watching us on the internet or somewhere, or Facebook Live, we'll be here in just a second when we get this lovely tour of Canada done. We've got mountains, lakes, oceans, fishing boats, and the ever-popular Canadian flag.
Hello, everybody.
And welcome to another edition of the Link Online. With me today, the whole team. We have Matthew with us.
Hello.
Lavon Savunts.
Hello.
And Marie-Claude as well
Hi.
with us once again. And in the control room, we have Marc-André Deschamps, Benoit Durand, and of course, the ever-mysterious Pierre Dutil. And you have to say his name in a mysterious way because he's a mysterious fellow.
I don't know why you keep making me laugh, but
You know it's coming.
yeah.
But it's still funny. Well, we have a very interesting show this time around. Again, well, we always do, but we're going to talk about political scandals, interstellar space, and terrorist attacks, sort of thing. So it's just one of those shows where everything is covered. So that's coming up on this edition of the Link Online. All right, we have a story that's a Canadian story, but it is, of course, making international headlines, and that is our own Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who has been doing an awful lot of apologizing this week. Lavon, this comes over allegedly racist incidents. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, and these incidents date back to 18 years and even more, and it all started on Wednesday when the U.S. news magazine Time dropped this bombshell on the Liberal campaign and published photos dating back to 2001. And these photos show our Prime Minister, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau, that's how we refer to him now during this election campaign, in full costume. And he is basically representing a character from
the
Arabian Nights, the 1001 Nights, turned into a very popular Disney cartoon at the time called Aladdin, and he is the character of Aladdin, has this extravagant costume. But the thing that really was the bombshell is that he has very dark brown makeup on, and it's been called brownface in reference to something that is known as blackface. So, and of course, this hit the campaign and exploded, and a few hours after the story was published by Time magazine, Justin Trudeau stood in his plane, he's campaigning right now, and had to explain to reporters what he was doing in 2001 and apologize.
I have worked all my life to try and create opportunities for people to fight against racism and intolerance, and I can just stand here and say that I made a mistake when I was younger, and I wish I hadn't. I should have known better then, but I didn't, and I did it, and I am deeply sorry for it. I'm going to be asking Canadians to forgive me for what I did. I shouldn't have done that. I take responsibility for it. It was a dumb thing to do. I'm disappointed in myself. I'm pissed off at myself for having done it. I wish I hadn't done it, but I did it, and I apologize for it.
And so this was his first apology. Wednesday evening or Wednesday night. And then on Thursday, Trudeau had to apologize once again, and this time because Global News revealed a video showing very young Justin Trudeau, maybe in his teenage years. Sometimes the video was shot sometimes in 1990s. We don't know for sure. And he is shown in blackface. He's wearing a white T-shirt. It's a very grainy old video, so you only get a few seconds of Trudeau, but that was enough. Again, showing Trudeau in blackface, his hands, even his legs in this black makeup, and he's smiling and making faces. And so Trudeau had to face Canadians again and apologize another time for this what he called a racist incident.
What I did hurt them, hurt people who shouldn't have to face intolerance and discrimination because of their identity. This is something that I deeply, deeply regret. Darkening your face, regardless of the context or the circumstances, is always unacceptable because of the racist history of blackface. I should have understood that then, and I never should have done it.
Hi, Dave Croft on the CBC News. Last night on the plane, when we asked you if the picture that emerged in the Time report was the only time you had done this, you left us with the impression there was only one other incident. And since then, Global News has released a video which seems to show that there was at least a third incident. So exactly how many times have you darkened your skin with makeup in an act that you have yourself described as racist?
I shared the moments that I recollected, but I recognize that it is something absolutely unacceptable to do. And yeah, I appreciate calling it makeup, but it was blackface. And that is just not right. It is something that people who live with the kind of discrimination that far too many people do because of the color of their skin, or their history, or their origins, or their language, or their religion, face on a regular basis. And I didn't see that from the layers of privilege that I have. And for that, I am deeply sorry, and I apologize.
So one of the people who comes from a racial or ethnic minority background is the leader of the new Democratic Party of Canada, Jagmeet Singh. And I think he had some of the most compelling reaction for me in terms of how he reacted to these images of Prime Minister Trudeau. Let's listen to what he had to say about what he felt when he saw these images.
It's not for me to forgive, it's for Canadians to forgive him if they choose to or not. But I have to really point out what we're seeing now is an ongoing pattern of behavior that's really going to hurt Canadians. They're going to see the Prime Minister mocking the realities that so many Canadians live with. And it is not a joke. Racism means that people are hurt physically, they're hurt mentally, they don't get the jobs that they need and want. It has hurt people in such a horrible way. It can never be something that's made light of. And I'm really more and more thinking about how much this is going to hurt Canadians. To see more and more images coming out is just going to make that pain even deeper. It's going to make Canadians think about what they've gone through in their lives, how it's hurt them in their lives. And I want folks to really know that they are valued, they are loved, they have worth. Don't let these images make you question your own self-worth.
And that was NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. Of course, the Trudeau's biggest opposition is the Conservative Party of Canada, and Conservative leader Andrew Scheer has been calling for Trudeau to resign over this. He has said that Trudeau has lost the moral authority to govern Canada, and he doesn't accept his apology.
Well, as I said, I believe that Canadians might have been able to accept his apology if he had been truthful and open, if he hadn't based that apology on a lie. But he was specifically asked if there were other incidences where he engaged in this type of racist behavior, and he indicated that there was only one other incident, and now we know that there was at least three. So once again, we see with Justin Trudeau one set of rules for himself and one set of rules for the rest of us.
And this is where really it's could hurt Trudeau if this incident sticks, is because Trudeau has set this very high moral standard, has staked this high moral ground, and he now appears to be quite hypocritical because other people have pointed out is that if this were another person in his party or another party, that person would have been kicked out of the Liberal caucus for anything resembling this. And Trudeau has said, no, we would judge this by, case by case basis. And it has to be said also that he has a lot of support still, even among racial communities in Canada. People have come to his defense, saying that don't forget, this is in the context of a federal election. People are questioning the motivation of the Conservative opposition, because it has emerged that video of young Trudeau in blackface was passed on to Global News by the Conservative Party. It's not clear how long the Conservative Party had this video, and Andrew Scheer yesterday was asked about that himself, and he kind of dodged that question, saying, "Oh, I have personally seen that video only for the first time on Thursday," but he would not say if people in his campaign knew about its existence for a long time. And so, and there's also questions about now foreign interference, because the initial story was broken by Time magazine, which is a U.S. publication. It has a lot of readers in Canada, but it's not a Canadian publication. So there's so many layers to this story right now. And, I've asked various experts whether this is really going to hurt Trudeau's campaign. Most people say they don't expect it to hurt Trudeau's re-election. But one expert I talked to, Jack Jedwab in Montreal, he said it's already hurt Canada's international image, because it runs counter to the international image that Trudeau has so carefully cultivated, and basically runs counter to all the causes of diversity, of multiculturalism he's been championing on the international scene. So we'll see.
Well, I think because this has been so widely covered in the international press, I don't think it's hurt Canada's reputation as much as it's hurt Trudeau's reputation internationally directly. Because again, as pointed out, he's taken this high ground, and it seems like on several issues that he's mentioned while on this high ground, he's been shown to be perhaps a little bit hypocritical. When it comes to Indigenous affairs, when it comes to feminism, and now this whole idea about ethnic communities and diversity and so on, and this kind of thing. So I think there have been headlines directly saying Mr. Trudeau is not the person that he's publicly claimed to be.
Well, and this is I think the danger for him is also that Trudeau is a brand. When he was first elected in 2015, people were saying that he turned around the Liberal Party and on this brand. And now, if you would consider in the purely mercantile point of view, this brand has now been damaged, whether in Canada, but certainly in international.
I think we have to keep in mind that it's all happening in a electoral campaign.
Absolutely.
And it's really good that we get to discuss issues like that anyway socially, but we should give weight to people that are not involved in the campaign, like La Ligue des Noirs de Montréal. They reacted, and to them it's really a storm in a glass of water, as we say in French, because to them, they still support Trudeau, and they feel like he's done concretely stuff for the Black community, if you may say. And also in French, Danny Laferrière, a very reputable writer, reacted, Haitian from Haiti, sorry. And he reacted to the thing, and he says it's completely, he says it's not an issue, it wasn't racism. Trudeau should not have apologized. He did because he's in the campaign, and that's what people want to hear from him, but so, although there are some Black people who were offended, and those should be heard too.
Yeah.
Yolande James, our commentator in Radio-Canada, who used to be
a
a
minister,
minister. She was offended
and wanted to run for the Federal Liberal
yeah,
Party,
but she
and
she
was
doesn't.
not selected.
I think she still wants. There's still a dialogue that is open about it, but. Yeah.
Well, that's just another interesting bump along the road to the final vote, which will happen on October 21st in Canada. And of course, I don't doubt that we'll find more scandals along the way between now and then. So stay tuned. We'll have more of that coming up in the weeks to come. In just a moment, we're going to find out about drone attacks. Well, this week, 2 Saudi oil installations were attacked by drone missiles, which caused major damage. And one of the installations was, in fact, the largest refinery in the world. And the attacks, temporarily at least, halted about half the production from Saudi Arabia. And that represents about 5% of the world's oil production. It's been temporarily taken offline. Now, the drones are also being called kamikaze missiles by some, and what they are is relatively small and somewhat equivalent to relatively low-tech cruise missiles. And the Houthi rebels in Yemen have claimed responsibility, but the U.S. and the Saudis are blaming Iran for the attacks. And to get more on this, I spoke to James Devine, Associate Professor in Political Science and International Relations at Mount Allison University in New Brunswick. And he specializes in the politics and foreign policy of Iran. And in this excerpt, he begins first with who might have been responsible.
The type of drones that are suspected to be in the attack are of an Iranian origin, but they still could have come from the Houthis. And in theory, those drones could have been launched from Yemen and have come from the north and attacked from that angle. So it may look like it's been coming from Iraq or Iran, but it still could be coming from Yemen.
So why does the U.S. Insist that Iran is responsible for this?
Well, it's mostly about context. So this is part of a larger crisis that's been taking place between the United States and Iran over the past year. After the U.S. pulled out of the nuclear deal with Iran, they've been pressuring Iran to renegotiate the deal on much more restrictive terms. And the way they've been doing that is by trying to squeeze the Iranian economy through sanctions on its oil industry. And as those sanctions have become more and more effective, Iran has been pushing back. In part, that's been through cyber attacks. There's been attacks against Western infrastructure in Iraq. There was also the bombings of the tankers in the Persian Gulf, which were attributed to Iran as well. And, of course, shooting down an American drone over Iranian or ostensibly Iranian airspace. All of these things are part of this crisis. So when the attack takes place in Saudi Arabia, everyone immediately assumes that it's part of this.
So why would Iran attack Saudi Arabia, or why would the Houthis attack this oil facility?
Well, this is a way of demonstrating, if it is Iran, it's a way of demonstrating that they cannot be pushed around. And if the United States is intent on destroying their economy, they have ways of retaliating. And it's a way of trying to send a message to the United States that they continue on this course of action. It's going to be very costly and potentially could drag them into a war. If it's the Houthis, they could be doing it on behalf of the Iranians. That's entirely possible. But the Houthis have their own reasons for striking at Saudi Arabia because the Saudis are backing their opponents in the Yemeni civil war. So Saudi Arabia and the Houthis are enemies in their own right.
Now, Professor Devine, this may not necessarily be in your area of expertise, but the fact that drones were used in this, I guess we'll call it somewhat unsophisticated attack, what does that say about the future of installations like this, whether it be a nuclear installation, a ship going through the Straits of Hormuz?
Well, the use of drones in the attack suggests that weaker powers have the capacity to strike back at bigger states. So if, for instance, it was the Houthis who did this, and it is possible that it was, this is a small non-state actor, not a power by any stretch of the imagination capable of striking such a blow. Everybody will pay attention to this. It suggests that the type of warfare we're likely to see is going to change in the future. And it's also worth pointing out that it's not just the use of drones, but there's been a lot of cyber attacks going back and forth between the United States and Iran. So definitely conflict is changing and evolving in ways which are unpredictable and ways which are very difficult to defend against. So Drones are something. This was a larger attack. If the Saudis had been ready, they probably would have been able to do something about it. But one small single drone is a very difficult thing to detect.
And that was James Devine, Associate Professor in Political Science and International Relations at Mount Allison University in New Brunswick. And as he points out, this sort of signals a whole new kind of era in conflict, because these are relatively small things. This drone missile, like 20 feet long, roughly speaking, more or less, a few meters. And they're very difficult to defend against because they are small and they are fast. And he said even more difficult is if you launch a whole bunch of them at the same time. So, you only have so many resources. So what do you do?
The thing is that in case of Saudi Arabia, they might have the latest Patriot missiles from the United States, but you're not going to shoot a Patriot missile at a drone that can be taken down by something a lot smaller. And
if you can even detect it in the
yes.
first place, because again, they're so small. Those Patriot missiles are designed against large missiles and jet fighters and things that are. But these are sort of like cruise missiles low to the ground, and so they're difficult to detect. So. Interesting times ahead. And cyber warfare, of course, we can't forget that as well. Now, talking about missiles, we're going to be going to space. Not quite the same thing, but, but that's the link we're going to go with right now. Well, that was a little low-key jazz there to take us up to space.
Deep space.
Well, it's back in 2017 that astronomers made a remarkable discovery by locating and studying the very first interstellar object. It was a kind of a strange, oddly shaped space rock that they named Oumuamua or something. Is that right?
Yes.
Oumuamua. They thought it was like an interstellar spaceship because of its odd shape, right? Is this some kind of thing from like 2001 Space Odyssey? But now they've got a second object that they've discovered from interstellar space. They found that with the Canada-France-Hawaii telescope. And Matthew, this is your story.
Yeah, so Mark, this time the important thing is that it could be a comet, making it the first interstellar one ever observed by humans. And why is it important? It's because comet could help us better understand our solar system and our origins and the solar system origins itself. So they called it, as for now, C2019Q4. It was first spotted by an amateur astronomer, Gennady Borisov, on August 30th in Crimea. And then, thanks to the Canada-France-Hawaii telescope, the US astronomer Karen Meech was able to look at it closer. You have to know that she's one of the scientists who also discovered the Oumuamua object.
See, it's not just me.
No, it's quite a tricky name. And again, she's one of the first ones to take a closer look at this new object. They struggled a bit, but they managed to get a first image. You'll see it in the article. And thanks to that, they analyzed a tail to the comet. And this is when the entire scientific community became really excited about it. And why? Why were they excited? Because you can see that Karen was so excited about it that she had a big presentation to do in Vienna with the entire team, but she worked on it for days. And when I called her, she was in a hotel room in Vienna working on a paper and doing this at the same time. And she explained to me why this news was so important.
After enough data were obtained, people realized this really was interstellar. And the really interesting thing about these is, we strive to understand the earliest stages of building our solar system. And the only way to look at what happened in our solar system is to look back at the fossil remnants, in other words, meteorites, asteroids, and comets. But of course, that doesn't tell you the whole story about all of the processes. And so now with big telescopes, we're starting to be able to watch this unfolding in other solar systems where we see that they still have the disk of gas and dust surrounding the young star. And so we can watch the planet-building process there. The problem is we don't yet have sufficient enough resolution so that we can look at chemistry as a function of distance from the star and get really fine details on the young planets. And so what's exciting about something like an interstellar object, it's likely an ejected piece of material from the process that occurred in another solar system. And when it passes through our solar system, we effectively have a sample that's brought to us close enough that we can study it in detail.
So right now, astronomers don't know much about this object because it's quite difficult to observe it because of its position in our solar system. But what we've got is really encouraging. And what is also interesting is that with the first object we saw, scientists only had 1 week to observe it, because when they saw it, the object was already saying goodbye to us and leaving our solar system. This one will have something around 1 year to observe it. And Mitch told me about her plans for the future and when they'll be able to look at it.
It's going to be coming out of conjunction in a couple weeks, depending on the telescope. And then it will start diving so far south that come January it will be very hard to get from northern hemisphere telescopes. And then it will be nicely visible in the southern hemisphere, and it won't go into solar conjunction, be too close to the sun in the sky to be visible until about October of next year. However, using that very poorly constrained model that I developed, I'm predicting that it will be very faint by May of next year. And so anything from May on to October is going to require very big telescopes and a lot of telescope time. But this is fantastic because we're going to be able to watch it as it brightens, as it comes towards perihelion on December 8th, and then we can watch as it fades again. And by virtue of having an entire year to observe it, we can do all of the experiments that we couldn't do with the first interstellar object because we only had a week. And so I think some of the really exciting science will be to look at the chemistry of this, to get spectra, to look at the composition of the gases coming off, to maybe look at the chemical signatures in the dust, to really see if the chemistry is the same in our solar system as opposed to other solar systems. Of course, all the chemicals in space are the same, but what the distribution is and whether another solar system might be rich in certain compounds, that's what's really exciting about this object.
So astronomers will now try to calculate the object's trajectory to understand where it comes from exactly and continue to analyze it to understand how our solar system was formed. We'll look at it and continue to report on it in the coming months, so stay tuned to Radio Canada International to know more about this interstellar comet.
And get your phasers ready, just in case.
Yes.
Levon, who do we have watching us right now?
Oh, we just got a hello from Gustavo Lucas, who's watching us from Melo in Uruguay, and he says, it's always a pleasure to listen to you and to watch your program. Thank you very much.
Gustavo, hello.
Hi, Gustavo.
Now, Marie-Claude, what do you have for us?
Well, I always like to encourage people to explore our website because, of course, there's all the great newsy stories, but there's stuff that might not be as obvious on our, let's say, our homepage. Like, I guess you guys know we have a weekly album, of course, and you can find it at the bottom of our homepage. So there you can see in pictures your stories that you create, but like here we have this week, I'm the one who picked the stories. So what is that, Mark? That was your story.
That's a precision tractor square dance.
Yeah,
it's really actually it's really amazing to see these things because they actually do a square dance. They have a collar and they drive these tractors back and forth.
So that's part of the bigger event called the International Plowing Competition.
Yeah.
Which is,
and it happens
Premier?
every.
That's the
every
Ontario
year.
Premier. And
That was from last year.
I noticed when they put this picture out, they didn't say it in the picture.
Yeah.
But that is the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, and he's driving a Ford tractor. And not only a Ford tractor, but it is a blue Ford tractor because blue is the color of the Progressive Conservatives and the Federal Conservative Party, for that matter. So I thought that was pretty well thought out on the part of his team.
Some PR people got their paychecks worth.
Yeah. So I don't pick necessarily the stories that are the most important of the week, but usually I go with the visual. And there was a story that you wrote, Matthew, about Nova Scotia providing menstrual products to girls in school. And to me, it's a great story. It's good news for young girls. And also I find agency pictures, they can be funny sometimes, so that's good.
Well, what about the bad news, the sad news? You're leaving us.
I know. Didn't we have fun?
Well, we did, but you're going to leave us, which is not fun at all. So this is your last appearance on the show, I guess. So.
Yes.
So we have to say goodbye.
Unless you
Marie
come
Claude.
as
I
a
will
guest.
come.
The guest,
Please
yeah.
invite me or Skype with me.
Oh, we
Yeah.
could do that.
Wherever
When
I
you
am
go
in the
fishing?
world.
Well,
Yes.
for Marie-Claude and Matthew and Lavon and myself and Benoit and Marc-André and Pierre, thanks for watching. Take care until next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.